What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 637. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you been drafting?
Oh, yeah. Been drafting quite a bit. This is a fun set. A lot of cool stuff going on, and it's got a lot of the things that can keep me coming back to a set, which is a lot of really neat build-arounds, and we're going to talk kind of how that's going to work during the show, but I've been happy so far.
Yeah, sure. The gameplay's been appropriately complex as well, which is I know is another big draw for you, as it is for me as well. We're going to go over the format overview here for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty today, and that's going to be, us breaking down what we know of the format here in our first week with it. So, first things first, our sponsors, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for all things Magic related. Anything you need, you can find it over at CFB. They've got a marketplace for singles, still sell sealed product and all that kind of stuff over there as well. So don't worry if that's the kind of stuff you want. If you need, things like sleeves and deck boxes and stuff, you can find them at Channel Fireball as well. And while you're there, also premium content. That's right. Some of the best writers about Magic are at Channel Fireball, and you can find them and get their take on the latest decks, technology, sideboard guides, limited stuff, all of it over at CFB Pro. And we recommend you check them out. If you do end up picking up something over at CFB, if you use the affiliate code LR at checkout, you just type in LR into that promo code box. It'll let them know that we sent you, and we do appreciate it. The show is also brought to you by FTX. That's the regulated safe place to go if you're interested in investing in blockchain-based technologies, mainly cryptocurrencies, that type of stuff. If you're interested in that, if that's a world that kind of makes you go, well, is there something to all this? It's still around after all this time. FTX is a great place to learn about it. And then when you're ready to take that leap, to actually invest in it as well. If you're inside the United States, it's ftx.us, and outside is ftx.com. And I'll remind you, this is an investment type. So if you're going to be investing your money, you want to make sure that you consult a financial advisor before doing investments of any kind. Show's also brought to you by you via the Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources. This is where you can go to support the show directly. Every person that signs up on the Patreon gets a thank you card and an LR sticker in the mail. You can throw it on your water bottle, your laptop, or wherever you'd like. I wanted to make sure that no matter what level you signed up for, you got something cool in the mail. And so that's what you get. Patreon.com/limited resources to find out more about that. One of the things that you get access to as a patron is Patreon question of the month thread. And this one comes from Benjamin, who says, Marshall and Luis, one of the older questions on a question of the week, or maybe a Q&A question, was what's your favorite creature in Magic? But what about your favorite non-creature spell? Or if that's too broad, what's your favorite instant or sorcery?
I think Brainstorm is probably the card I've enjoyed casting the most. Mm-hmm. A card I often go to as well as Gifts Ungiven is one of the cards that really made me fall in love with Magic. I played a lot of Gifts Ungiven in Vintage, and it was just – I actually was pretty sad when Unburial Rites came out and the play turned into cast gifts for Unburial Rites plus a big creature and then just do that. Because I loved it so much more, and it's like, ooh, I'm going to go for these 4 cards. We'll see if they give me the right ones that let me win right away, or what do I think they're going to give me? And there's like a lot of these like mind game elements that end up just kind of going away, once the stronger combo went out. But yeah, Gifts and Brainstorm, 2 of my all-time favorites for sure. Yeah,
I loved I watched you play with Gifts a lot as well, Cube and stuff like that. And, while there are combos, I always liked it when you're like, I think I'm going to go for a value Gifts here. Right. And you're getting like 4 things that your opponent just really doesn't want to see. And you're going to get 2 of them. And yeah, they might be the 2 worst, but they're going to be good. Or the types of piles that you would make where, you have redundancy, basically, like where they have to give you one version of the card that they don't want, that kind of thing. I miss that. I miss when people use that card as the words were written on it rather than the kind of loophole version. Yeah. For me, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really thought about this super deeply. There could be things I'm forgetting, but type of cards that came to mind for me were cards like Cryptic Command, Preordain. One card I really like in Cube a lot is Mystic Confluence. These kind of really high leverage, high power, and, Preordain's more on the efficient end of the spectrum, but, like Cryptic Command and Mystic Confluence are these kind of blowout cards that can affect the board, but also affect the stack, also affect your cards in hand, and you get to choose. There's probably some cards that I'm not thinking of because I just read this now, but I would go with Cryptic Command. It's
a good one.
Super powerful, but also a lot of really great choices that matter, right? Like you have to actually choose appropriately, and the timing matters, and tap into team and all that kind of stuff. So I'll go with Cryptic. Okay, Luis, let's get into some Crack-A-Packs here. These are super important. These are the first Crack-A-Packs that we're doing on the show for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And this gives us an idea to kind of figure out where both you and I are at with the format, and then we can hash it out. So our first card out is Mountain. Good God, those things look really cool. They still don't look like lands to me. Like when somebody plays one of those, I'm like, what is that? Oh, right. But man, they're just visually striking. Anyway, actual cards. Dragonfly Suit is the first card out. 2 and a white, 3/2 flying vehicle with crew 1. Have really been unimpressed with Dragonfly Suit. I tried it once and I hated it. And when my opponent plays it, I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I actually like Brute Suit quite a bit, but that's because it goes into these like red artifact decks or decks playing network disruptors that, can really make use of it. Dragonfly Suit is just too small of an upgrade from whatever you're tapping, and I haven't been impressed with it either.
Kami of Industry. This one snuck up on me. I like this card quite a bit. With 4 and a red, 3/6, and when it ETBs, you can return an artifact card with mana value 3 or less to the battlefield. It gains haste and you sack it at the beginning of the next end step. This card's been good. There's a bunch of good targets that you can get for different effects, right? Like you can get the 401 that makes it so they can't block and kind of, pick up a win, or you can get a value card like, the blue card draw artifact or whatever. And, there's kind of a bunch of stuff in between.
Yeah, it's solid. I end up cutting it a decent amount of the time in my artifact decks because you really want your artifact count to be high, but there's enough combos with this that it definitely makes the cut a reasonable amount of the time. I would not expect to be first picking this, of course, but it is a solid card.
Yeah, more solid than I thought. Explosive Entry is next. This is 1 and a red for a sorcery, and it says destroy up to 1 target artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Even though I've actually been totally good with artifact and enchantment destruction in the main, Explosive Entry is one that I haven't like to play in the main. Maybe I'm just a little slow on it, but I haven't been playing it. Have you?
I think enchantment removal is better than artifact removal because the sagas are so powerful, and there's a lot of good enchantment targets. There are a decent amount of artifact targets, but I just find you rarely actually have room for Explosive Entry to get in there.
Okay. Next is Network Terminal. This is 3 mana artifact, taps for any 1 mana of any color, and you can pay 1, tap it, and tap another artifact you control to draw a card and then discard a card. It's funny. I've been playing a lot of, I've been splashing around with colors a lot. I have not been sticking to just 2 colors very often, but Network Terminal is not why. I have not been playing this card at all.
Well, I actually do play this card in a circumstance that's come up a lot, which is when you have Containment Construct, the 2 mana 2/1 that when you discard a card, you can play the card that turn.
Oh yeah, nice combo.
And I found Containment Construct to just be really good. And so a deck that I've drafted a couple times, I think 3 times already, is blue, red, black, like Grixis artifacts with Containment Construct and Network Terminal, kind of tying it all together.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that's a really nice engine. And then you're also taking advantage of the splashing ability from it as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Draft in and draft out, though, haven't really been wanting this card.
No. It's a card you can pick up effectively for free. Like,
right.
You will never be short on network terminals.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a ton of mana fixing, either land or colorless, that enables you to play a lot of colors pretty comfortably, and network terminal's just not really part of that group. So it says a lot about how good the fixing is when you can just ignore a card like this for just pure mana fixing purposes. Next is Spirited Companion. This is 1 and a white 1/1, and it's an enchantment creature, which is sometimes of note. And when it ETBs, you draw a card. I just jam as many of these as I can get when I'm playing white.
Yeah, this card is as good as everyone thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's really great.
It's an excellent card.
Yeah. Yeah. It ties the room together, right? Like it does the thing that it says on the surface, and that's already good enough for the reasons we outline in the set review. But then, the fact that it's an enchantment helps a lot too, just for certain decks or whatever. And it just sort of does all the things. Spell Pierce is next. blue instant counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. Have yet to play one. Have yet to see one on the stack. I've been playing Premier, and it just feels like a
it's a sideboard card. I mean, yeah, I could see bringing it in against certain decks, but I have not been playing best of 3. So
same. Next is Return to Action. This is 1 and a black instant until end of turn target creature gets +1/+0 and gains lifelink. And when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. I haven't been playing it. These type of cards tend to be fringe playable, borderline playable, but I don't know. It just hasn't made it in for me. Where are you at on it?
I think it's fine. I've had it be good against me. I put it in a deck and had it be okay. But the main thing with cards like this is it's not a removal spell. It's not a creature. It generally doesn't work with a specific theme all that well. Like your artifact deck is going to cut almost every card that's not an artifact except for your like best 3 or 4.
Right.
So as a result, it ends up on the sidelines a lot more often than you kind of hope.
Yeah, it has some cool stuff with sagas and whatever, but it's got a relatively high setup cost for a card like this where the payoff isn't exactly amazing. Next is Iron Hoof Boar. This is the 5 and a red 5/4 trample haste artifact creature boar, and it has channel. For 1 and a red. You can discard it to give a creature +3/+1 and trample until end of turn. I've been playing a lot of Iron Hoof Boar. It's just great.
Yeah, it's a good card. It fits best in kind of like ramp decks that have a good shot of casting it. I've been a little disappointed with it in the artifact deck actually, because that deck just doesn't get to 6 mana that often, and it's especially bad with experimental synthesizers. When you flip it off the top, you can't channel it and you can't cast it. So yes. You do have to kind of watch out for that. But yes, it is a very strong card on raid. It
is. Yeah. I've also liked it when I've had the blue-red uncommon that reduces the cost. It is such a different card on 5. Like your opponent usually just goes,
on 5.
What? Yeah, right, exactly. And it slams. I mean, it really does close out the game quickly. Master's Rebuke is next. 1 and a green for an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control.
Fine card. It works really well with Fang of Shigeki, the 1/1 Death Toucher. That is also a great card you should always be playing. So you can never really get excited about these cards, but they're obviously, good cards when you put them in your deck.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we'll talk about removal a bit this show as we hit these removal spells. And, removal, of course, is important, and limited is something that you kind of need to have to win the game. But this set does feel a little bit like the removal is somewhat interchangeable. We've had a couple of sets in a row before this where the removal was not created equal. It was really like there was some premium stuff that did exactly what you want, and then a bunch of like, not really sure I want to run this. And Master's Rebuke fits right in the middle where it's like, yeah, I want one of these in my deck. This is a card I want to play. But it never really blows your mind. You're never just like, wow, I had a Master's Rebuke and that was it. And a lot of the removal fits that description. So it's kind of like, yes, you need to take it. You need to have it, but you don't ever really need to be like, oh my God, a Master's Rebuke. I got it now we win or whatever. That moves us to the uncommons. First one is Kamano faces, Kakazan. This is the red, saga. And it does 1 damage to each, opponent when it ETBs, and then when you cast your next creature spell, that creature gets a +1/+1 counter, and then it flips over into, what is it, like a 2/2 haste something?
Yeah, it's a 2/2 haste, and also creatures dealt damage
exiled.
by get exiled or whatever.
And I think it's by all your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so which is sometimes relevant as well. But man, these little 1-drop sagas are just a beating.
Well, I mean, as we're going to talk about, I think every saga is excellent. I just think all the sagas are great. I literally don't think that there's like a bad saga in the set. I don't know. I don't know what the worst one is, but they are very, very good.
Yeah. And this one is no exception. It's a strong card and definitely one that I would look to play always. I mean, look, you do want to try to build towards it. The real key is if you can get that trigger on the second thing. You play this on 1, and then you play your 2-drop with a counter on it, and then you get a 2/2 the next turn plus whatever you play. It adds up really, really fast. If you don't get to play a 2-drop and get that counter, it goes down a bit. That's an important piece of the puzzle to really maximize on the card. Here's a good card to put in that spot.
Well,
Go ahead.
Before we get to the end of the uncommons, or the more of the uncommons, at the end of all the commons, I think it's very clearly you're taking Spirited Companion.
Yes, definitely.
And these uncommons so far haven't been like super impressive to go over that. Like I would take Spirited Companion over Kumano Faces Kakazan.
Yeah, I think that's close-ish, but yeah, I agree. Next is Sokenzan Smelter for our next uncommon, which I really like. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can pay 1 and sacrifice an artifact. And if you do, you get a 3/1 red construct artifact creature token with haste.
Yes, this goes perfectly in this like low curve artifact deck I've been talking about, where you're sacking a virus beetle or an experimental synthesizer.
Yes.
Getting a 3/1 out of the deal. So really cool card. I would probably take this as the pack currently stands, actually.
I would too. It's been really powerful. And there's some really disgusting things you can do too. Like if you can get a couple of treasure tokens and turn them into 3/1s, like game snowballs. Next is a card I remember you trying out when when the format first came out. I haven't actually got the chance to play it yet. It's Colossal Sky Turtle. This is the 4GGU, so 7 mana, 6/5 flying with Ward 2. It's an enchantment creature turtle. And it has 2 different channel abilities. You can pay 2 and a green to return target card from your graveyard to your hand, or 1 and a blue to return target creature to its owner's hand. I mean, this card is awesome. Like, it just has everything. How was it for you when you played it?
Yeah, I'm struggling to imagine a world where you have never tried this card.
It's weird. I guess I just have gotten a little unlucky, or I've been pushing too hard into. I've been playing a lot of the artifacts deck or whatever. So pack 2, pack 3.
This card's fantastic. The Sky Turtle. First of all, it's classic great early, great late, right? Where like if you have to use it as a bounce spell early, that's totally fine. But what really puts this over the top is the fact that, casting it is great. It's a 7 mana, 6/5 flying Ward 2, but also there's a couple different loops with it. If you get the Nature's Renewal, where you can get back an enchantment or in a creature, you can get back this plus something else, then use the turtle to get this back. And you can just keep doing that. So that already gives you a slow but powerful value engine. And then you have something like if you have the Weaver, which lets you copy the rare that lets you copy artifact or enchantment triggered abilities, then this also works there. So there's some cool stuff you can do with the Sky Turtle, while it's also just a good card pretty much on all parts. So it's a card I'm very high on, and I know that you will enjoy playing with it once you get around to it.
I'm not going to lie, Luis. You had me at slow but powerful value engine. I was like, I'm in. Yep. Those are all the things, especially slow. Give me that slow burn. So the question is, would you take it over like the Smelter here?
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay,
the other
it's in
thing
that
is,
ballpark.
I found the like 3 to 5 color, ramp enchantment value decks to be just really good. And this card fits really nicely. It's super splashable because it's a mono green card and a mono blue card. Obviously, you want to have access to both of them to really make the card good, but you're playing white green. You could definitely splash the turtle. And, it's a regrowth, except sometimes you draw your blue and you can cast it or use the bounce mode.
It's funny. It's like, I love this stage of the format because I've definitely kind of zeroed in on on the artifact style decks a little bit, but I know there's a lot waiting for me still, and that makes me really happy.
Oh yeah. No, that part is very cool.
Next is Blade Blizzard Kitsune. This is the 2 and a white 2/2 double striker, but it also has ninjutsu for 3 and a white. I played this a few times and actually been a little disappointed by it. It tends to play out like if you ninjutsu it, it's expensive. It's 4 mana and you do get a nice hit. So you get in for, basically 4 damage. But it's really hard to augment the creature in combat after you've paid the ninjutsu cost because it's expensive. So it's rare that you get the and a pump spell and you're dead or whatever. And then when you have it on the battlefield, it's okay. It's a 2/2 double strike. It's going to pull its weight, but it's not a warrior or a samurai, even though it's in those colors and it's kind of begging to be a warrior or samurai to attack alone and get a whole bunch of bonuses. And so you just have to suit it up with some equipment or find a combat trick or whatever, or they trade it off for their 3/3. So I've been a little disappointed by, the Blade Blizzard Kitsune, even if it is a fine playable.
Yeah, I haven't. This hadn't been the direction most of my decks have gone, and I'm sure it's intentionally not Warrior Samurai too. By the way,
no, totally. And I just, when you play it, you're like, well, this would be kind of a must block, a must kill, or a must block in that deck, and out on its own, it's kind of a easy block. All right, well, our rare, it happens to be mythic rare this time. It's Atsushi the Blazing Sky, 2 red for a 4/4 flying trample legendary creature dragon spirit. This is the one that when it dies, you can exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until the end of your next turn, you can play those cards, or you can make 3 treasure tokens. This is all off of your 4/4 flying for 4 with trample.
The Blazing Sausage. Yeah, of course you're going to take this card. All the mythic dragons sausage are just like windmill slam first pick. Look at it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I did not know that until now, but your sausage is burning. Easy pick. Card's been great. Look, these are, to me, these dragons, they really hit a sweet spot with these, because when somebody plays these, I'm like, oh boy, like we got a fight ahead of us. This is going to be tough. But you know what I don't think? Well, that's it. The game's over, right? Like now I just can never win. Like there are cards in the last set, numerous, right? They play Troxel and you're like, the game's over. They play Atsushi, even on 4, and you're like, okay, I've got 2 or 3 turns to put together a plan. If I kill Atsushi, they may hit like land 2-drop and get a little value out of it. So it's like I'm behind, but the game isn't over. And I really like that. And it's felt like that for each of the dragons.
Yeah, I think they've landed in a very nice spot, because there's enough exile counter spells I think are decent. There's bounce. Like the dragons are great. You should first pick them. They'll be the best card in your deck, but it's not game over in the same way that, some of the cards that we've seen like Toxrill or Halana and Alina are. They're expensive enough. And this one only costs 4, but I've cast this card and lost pretty badly. It was on stream even. Like
I saw.
Your opponent can just do better stuff. It's not just game over.
That brings up a question. Game design perspective wise, does that mean that these are a flop for the other? A lot of times we look at splashy mythics, and you and I will talk on the show and we'll say, look, we get it. This wasn't really made to be in the limited environment. This is for commander players, or for even constructed formats or whatever, where they need some big thing. Is that the case? Like if we're happy, are they not happy?
No, I think that these dragons, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I think these dragons have a reasonable shot of like hitting where you want to when it comes to those players,
Okay, cool. So well done then. Next crack a pack. Let's do another one, because I want to make sure that we get a good vibe here for what we're feeling in the format. The next one is starts with Swiftwater Cliffs. That's the gain land that is for red or blue. I've been playing a lot of these gain lands. I think that, these change the format when there's the full set of them and they can show up in this slot. I mean, I will play 3 colors pretty routinely. Like I'm not shy about it at all. Yeah.
I think that these lands, like there was a strategy in cons that it's kind of interesting, right? When you talk about older formats like pre-arena, especially, where we don't know what it would look like ultimately, but there was a kind of dominant strategy in cons that one team used, in fact, Ari's team, to win the Pro Tour, which was basically just force 5 color gain lands and just take all the best spells. And like, I think that's generally not great if that's the best thing that's going on, but it's as one of the things that's going on, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I actually feel this is a format where you can do something similar to that. I'm not advocating just slamming a bunch of lands early in every pack, but I think there's a lot of packs where a gain land is probably just a better place to start, because you can end up with this like nice 3 or 4 color deck. There's no shortage of powerful cards, and gaining a life might not sound like a lot, but when you start at 23 instead, that's an extra turn. How many games will that win you that you would have lost otherwise to the aggressive white red deck you were playing against?
Totally. And it's a high leverage turn as well, because when you're trying to do expensive powerful things, that one extra turn can be huge, where like if you're a normal like mid-range or aggressive deck, an extra turn might just be an extra point of damage or something, but here it could be some huge spell that you weren't able to cast. So yeah, Swiftwater Cliffs, there you go. Next is Harmonious Emergence. This card's been better than we thought. It's 3 and a green. Enchant a land you control, it becomes a 4/5 with vigilance and haste. It's still a land, and then if the land would be destroyed, you sacrifice this thing, and the land gains indestructible until end of turn. So they don't get to kill your land if they kill it.
It's a little better, but I still haven't been super impressed with that in a world of exile and bounce spells and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's just okay. I kind of thought it was going to be bad, and it's been I would say pretty good, actually. Like, not good, but like approaching that. So it's a playable. I'll say that. Light the Way is next. This is white for an instant. Choose one, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or vehicle and untap it, or return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. I have not liked Light the Way. I've seen it in play a couple times, but it has just been too low impact for me to justify a slot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like, any of these cards that if you have the luxury of putting it in your deck, great. It'll do something. Like, they don't make cards that don't do anything really that often anymore.
Right.
It just, how do you fit that in? I mean, bouncing a Saga can be pretty nice. But yeah, I'm not super high on Light the Way. This next one though?
Yeah, I'm really curious about your thoughts on Iron Apprentice.
1 mana, 1/1 or 0/0 with a +1/+1 counter. When it dies, it moves its counter to one of your creatures. It's artifact. I like it. I play it in these red-black, decks that are trying to play 15, 16 lands, or red-blue decks that, and have like Oni Cult Anvil and like just like all these like, Patchwork Automaton and all these cheap payoffs. So I think it fits in those decks. And this card and cards like this are why I think this format has a lot of appeal. If you're drafting like the 5-color deck or white green auras or blue black ninjas, you don't even look at this card, right? It's not even a card.
Right.
But when you're drafting the artifact deck, you're like, nice, I picked up the second Iron Apprentice so I can have my 5/1 drops. It just, when you're drafting, some of these cards are really appealing, and some of them are, and some other times they're zeros, and I think that actually makes the format more interesting than everyone's like, well, I want the efficient 3 mana 3/2 and I want the good removal spell. And then if those aren't in the pack, I'll take the slightly less efficient 2/3. But it's like, no, Iron Apprentice is either like a solid playable or a complete blank. And I'd rather it be that than just in the middle for all the time. So not a card you want to take early. The whole point is you get these with 4 cards left in the pack because no one else wants them.
Right. Yeah. Really cool. Another, one of the things that we've talked about over the sets of late has been these cards that cross over into multiple archetypes, or kind of can be glue cards or be relevant in different archetypes. And this is just another perfect example of that, right? It's a modified creature without having to modify it yourself. And it's also an artifact. So just like those two things alone already do it. And then, it's also just a playable card because they bumped the power level by giving it modular or whatever. Or modular-ish. Crackling Emergence is next. This is the 1 and a red enchantment. Enchant a land, it becomes a 3/3 red spirit with haste. It's still a land, and then the same thing as before. If it dies, then the land stays.
This one I haven't been impressed with at all.
Me neither. I don't like it at all. I think it's just bad. Yeah, so bad. I know you like the hot tub Kami.
Oh yeah, Geothermal Kami. This is the 3 and a green 4/3 spirit. When it enters the battlefield, you may return an enchantment you control to its owner's hand, and if you do, you gain 3 life. And I've been really, really happy with this card because there's so many ways to get so much value. The main one is just picking up a Saga, right? You let the Saga run its course, or you've done the first 2 chapters, whatever. You can even pick up the Saga once it's flipped. It's still an enchantment, and then you just get to run through it again. And I when you've got like for example, the Konda Saga that exiles a 4-cost creature, and you're just like, kill your thing, they play something else, you're like, Geothermal Kami, pick it back up. Your opponent's just like, ugh. Like, how could that, be good for them? And there's also like some creature with a channel that you can pick up and rechannel. There's just a lot of ways to get value. Also, a 4-mana 4/3 that gains 3 is just really good. Obviously, you don't always gain the 3 life, but there are plenty of times when you do, and that life definitely matters. So really cool card, and definitely a card I'm very happy taking it early and playing.
Yeah, I have this is in that same spot that I haven't
I would probably take the land over it right now, but it's the second best card of what we've seen so far for sure.
Okay. Let's see if we can improve. Kaito's Pursuit. This is the 2 and a black sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards, ninjas and rogues. You control gain menace until end of turn. I have yet to put this card on the stack.
Nah, I not a fan of this one. Yeah. There's just much better discard, and you don't want to overload. Virus Beetle and Long Reach of Night are both better.
Definitely. Iganjo Exemplars next. This is the 1 and a white 2/1 enchantment creature Samurai. And whenever Samurai Warrior you control attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Gotta say, I thought this was going to be a bread and butter card for that archetype, and maybe it is, but I have not liked Iganjo Exemplar. I just haven't even played it.
No, I also haven't thought the attack alone archetype is particularly good.
I think it's failing.
So yeah, that's one of the ones that I think it just is mostly a miss.
Hey, here's more removal along the lines of what I talked about before. This is Tamiyo's Completion. This is the 3 and a blue flash aura that enchants an artifact, creature, or planeswalker, and it taps it and it loses all of its abilities and it doesn't untap.
I just don't think removal is very good in this format. Like, I just don't think that is the way you want to approach things. There's so many value cards, and especially something like Tamiyo's Completion. Like, yeah, on the one hand, it's nice that, it shuts anything down. You can shut down planeswalkers with this. It gets everything. But when you've got cards like Geothermal Kami to pick cards up, bounce spells, or just the fact that a lot of times you'll be playing a 4-mana spell against a card that costs less than 4 mana. I am not really big into a lot of the removal in this set. I don't think it's something that you should really be prioritizing.
But this is what comes up, because I agree with your overall sentiment. Like, if I'm using Tamiyo's Completion to lock down, say, a creature that was a saga, I'm just in misery, right? I probably spent more mana and they got all this value ahead of it, and now I'm like, okay, well, you can't attack me with that thing. But you can't just go into every draft with a deck that doesn't have removal in it, right? Like, you do need you need a Tamiyo's Completion or something, right? You can't just ignore them.
Yeah, you don't want literally 0 removal, but it's not something I tend to prioritize. And if you have a good enough game plan, I think you can get away with not much removal. Like, yes, when they play their Atsushi the Blazing Sky or whatever dragon, you kind of do need to kill it, right? Like that thing's going to mess you up. But a lot of the time, if by just making your own plays and playing your own stuff, it kind of gets around the need for removal. Most games, they'll play like one card you have to kill.
Right. Okay. So your point is we should be looking during the draft portion to deprioritize it enough so that, yeah, you have some every once in a while, but it's not like you're like, Tamiyo's Completion, got to take it, can't live without it, that type of level. That makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of where I'm at too, because I'll tell you, you can fight fire with fire. They play a saga that's going to be a good value for them. Well, you play one too, like rather than trying to 1-for-1 with them.
Look, just think of a deck full of removal, your classic red-black deck that's got like 8 removal spells and it isn't going to put a super fast clock on you. Your opponent casts, Behold the Unspeakable, and you just lose on the spot. You're already dead.
Right.
They just 4-for-1'd you.
Yes.
Good job.
Yes.
So yes, clearly, we're not saying go out there and draft 10 removal spells, but I just think in general, the removal is not the place you want to be. And I have been like, even cards like Voltage Surge and Kami's Flare have gone lower and lower in my pick orders, Twisted Embrace, like all that stuff. Like, we'll talk about, kind of where those fit in, but for the most part, I just would rather take cards that work with whatever the engine is that my deck has going, and then fill in the rest with the removal spells I pick up here and there.
The ones that are left over. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Next is another network terminal. We know we're not taking that. So that's the commons. What would you take here? Are you on the hot tub?
Yeah, I'm on the hot tub. I think no, pick one, pack one. I'm going to take Swiftwater Cliffs. I think that you should just lead with a land here. But I wouldn't fault you for taking the hot tub. I would fault you for taking any of the other cards.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if there's an uncommon that can beat it. The first one up actually does. It's Life of Toshiro Umezawa. This is 1 and a black, and for the first 2 chapters, you get to either give a creature +2/+2 until end of turn, creature -1/-1 until end of turn, or gain 2 life.
Yeah, and this card's absurd.
Yeah, and then it flips into a 2/3.
If you've ever had the experience of you cast a 2-mana creature with 1 toughness, and on turn 2 they cast Life of Toshiro Umezawa, like, you just want to concede that game.
You really do. It feels. I've done over. It to so many people.
And even later in the game, it still does something. You'll play this and give +2/+2 to your 2/2 flyer to attack past their 3/3, or pick off something, or even just gain 2 life, and that part's good too. So yeah, I'm obviously really high on Life of Toshiro Umezawa. It would certainly be my pick so far. Though the next card, Oni Cult Anvil, is also a nice one. This is the red-black uncommon artifact. This is the flagpole build around that actually does its job. And whenever one or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield during your turn, create a 1/1 colorless construct. It only triggers once a turn, and you can tap and sack an artifact to drain your opponent for 1. And so they lose life, you gain a life. I love this card too. I would still start with the Life of Toshiro Umezawa because it's a mono black card, and they're both very good. Plus, Life of Toshiro does not ask you for anything.
Right.
Like,
no build around, no setup cost.
If you have this card, in your deck, it's going to be good. That's it. I don't need to know what the rest of your deck is. Oni Cult Anvil's actually better if you have the deck for it, but pick one, pack one. You don't really want to start on the really narrow build around if you can help it. You'd rather just take the powerful card, which is maybe a 7 on the power level, or maybe Toshiro is like 7 and Oni Cult Invol's an 8, but it's so much easier to just take that and go to where the draft leads you, as opposed to taking Oni Cult Anvil and then having to second pick an experimental synthesizer over like a good green card because you don't want to abandon your first pick. So.
What about Nezumi Prowler? This is another mono black card that's pretty good. It's one and a black for a 3/1 with artifact creature Rat Ninja with ninjutsu for the same cost, 1 and a black. And when it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn.
This one's good. It's worse than either of the two uncommons. I wouldn't take either uncommon over it. I found this card to be solid. It's not game breaking, but it does its job.
Agree. I really like this next card. Replication Specialist. This is the 4 and a blue 3/4 flying Moonfolk Artificer. And whenever a non-token artifact ETB is under your control, you can pay 1 and a blue. And if you do, you create a copy that's a token that's a copy of it. That's like any artifact creature, any artifact you cast, you can just tack on 2 extra mana and just start spewing out copies. I found that if I get to untap with this, this is, of course, one of the cards that will occupy one of those rare, coveted non-artifact slots in your artifact deck. And this thing's just an absolute beating if you get to do anything with it at all.
Yeah, I do love Replication Specialist. I'm still on Life of Toshiro over it, though.
Not me.
It's close, but I think Replication Specialist costing 5 is a big tiebreaker. Though it's a great card for sure.
Yeah, and it does require setup costs, in that you really do need to put a bunch of artifacts to make it great. You can play it without, but you really do want to try to maximize. And the extra 2 mana is a thing like that matters. But yeah, I would take it here though. Last one is our rare, and it is Risona Asari Commander. This is the 1 red white 3/3 haste for a human samurai. And whenever Risona Asari Commander deals combat damage to a player, if it doesn't have an indestructible counter on it, put an indestructible counter on it. And whenever combat damage is dealt to you, remove an indestructible counter from Risona. Card's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just the 3 mana 3/3 haste that we've seen a bunch of times. Effectively, the text is obviously upside, but it's not like massive upside. I would take any of the uncommons over this to start the draft.
Agreed. Yeah, I would end up on Replication Specialist myself. You said you'd probably lean on Life of Toshiro Umezawa right now?
Yeah, but yeah. I really can't fault you for taking Replication Specialist. That card's also great.
Super close. Okay, so let's talk about our overview here and get into our kind of broad strokes thoughts on the format. What has your takeaway been from your first however many drafts?
So the format is actually pretty fast in the sense that you got to get down early. They've really pushed 1-drops in the set. I love it. There's a lot of early plays that kind of can affect the board, and ninjas in particular really punish you if you get behind. So they're just like the fast aggressive decks. So it's what we're seeing in Modern Limited, which is you can't really spend a bunch of time, doing nothing, but it doesn't mean you have to draft a like fast aggressive deck either. It's not Zendikar where you just, 2 ships passing in the night. It just means that if you want to draft a deck that, goes to the long game, which is great. There's a lot of really good decks that do that. And I think there's a lot of reasons to be kind of focused on that. You need to make sure that you've got early interaction or a game plan, whether it's 1/1 Death Touchers or bounce spells or life gain or removal, early blockers, whatever. So you don't just die to your opponent, messing you up with their early stuff. So definitely something that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. What about splashing?
Splashing's really easy. That's one of the things I like about the format is you can pretty easily splash off of there's the 5-color like Evolving Wilds land. There's all the gain lands. There's a number of other fixing cards, whether in green or Network Terminal if you have to. So playing a lot of 3-color decks, there's a lot of reasons to end up in 3 colors.
Do you have a sense for what percentage of your decks have been 3 colors?
I've drafted the artifact deck a lot, which tends to be closer to 2 colors than 3. But I would say of the decks that aren't that, like more than half are 3 colors.
Yeah, I would say I'm at about half right now, but trending towards more rather than less. So yeah, there you go. One of the big questions we had coming into the format, Luis, was artifact and enchantment removal in the main deck. We recommended playing it in the main deck coming out of the set review. Has that held up?
Enchantment removal, definitely, and especially the cards that hit artifacts or enchantments. I haven't been liking Lucky Offering or Explosive Entry, the only artifact removal spells, because those miss on, I think, at a higher rate. Like, everyone puts Sagas in their deck because they're great. But, you can play against decks that just don't have artifacts. Also, the enchantments tend to be cards that you care about killing more. One of the things that's funny is even in the artifact deck, you don't care that much if you have a Shatter if they're playing a bunch of 1 mana crappy artifacts.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. There's no one good target.
I would prefer to main deck the either enchantment or both removal, not main deck the artifact removal. And then to that last point, Sagas are great. Just the Sagas are fantastic in the set. You should be prioritizing Sagas, and the uncommon ones are especially busted. Yeah,
we love them in the set review, and boy, have they really held up. Remember, we kept coming down to the end and being like, well, the creature you get's not that great. And then we would like sum it up and be like, hold on a minute. So you get like 2 life and scry 2 and an okay creature for a mana or 2. And it's like, yeah, okay. As long as I'm not getting absolutely ran over, I'm in, right? Like that's good. And that's how it's played out. The Sagas just offer you in sum total a lot for your mana, even if it is spread out over a couple of turns.
So the other thing is like as we alluded to before, there are a lot of strong like linear themes in the set. So there are a lot of decks that are like, I care a ton about artifacts, or I want enchantments, or I'm looking, and those are the 2 strongest, but also ninjas have some element of that. And, they're like, there's the deck that wants exactly 1 artifact or enchantment, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot you can end up doing and making, and drafting around, but you also just have to really watch out because there's a lot that you can miss on too. There's a lot of kind of siloing during drafting where you care about a particular class of card, and sometimes you'll be in red black and be past a pack that has red and black cards, but they actually don't even fit with your theme. So you do kind of have to watch out for that, because that's something that can happen.
Right. Have you felt any one particular like color pair has jumped out to you as like really solidified in its theme? Where you're just like, oh yeah, that's, they have the blah, blah, blah deck.
The white, green X artifact or enchantment deck, definitely you feel it. The red, blue, black, whatever combo you want of their artifact deck, you really feel it. Those are the 2 strongest for me for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Those, the blue, black ninjas has been defined as well, I guess you could say.
The thing about the ninjas deck is you can end up playing the ninjas deck in a way that I think a lot of normal cards fit in that deck. You can have a ninja theme, but also be feeling like, oh, this is a kind of normalish blue black kind of control deck.
Mid-rangey, value-y, control-y stuff rather than like I'm all in on the ninjas plan. Yeah, that's fair. So what decks have you liked?
Well, the white, green X enchantment deck is definitely a lot of fun. This is the deck that's looking to kind of get value from things that have enchantment types, like with the Hot Tub Kami and Spirited Companion and Sagas, and then Season of Renewal. And it plays like a control-ish deck, which just like you end up looping these enchantments and getting tons of value from them. And
also has a lot of life gain, which helps buoy your life.
A lot of incidental life gain. It's really nice. You just end up in a spot where you're gaining life off all this random stuff. And these decks can go real long, and that's kind of what they're trying to do. They're not really trying to curve out exactly. The Gloom Shrieker, right? The 2/1 that gets back a permanent, and just bouncing that is just like disgusting. So
yes.
you can end up doing some really cool stuff with these decks. I also really like the blue, red, black artifact decks, and these decks are trying to have a low curve, take advantage of like experimental synthesizer. I've gone back and forth on Moonsnare Prototype, the Springleaf Drum, where I've had some drafts where I played it and I'm like, wow, this card's great, and this worked out really nicely, and I'm really happy that I played this. And then I've had some drafts where it's like, yeah, this card kind of sucked. I wish I hadn't ended up playing this card, Yeah,
it's interesting because, we talked about it before, you and I. And we're leaning on the fact, that it can be kind of a clunky removal spell. when you draw it late or when it's not going to do the mana production thing for you. But then we also just had a conversation, right, about us not really prioritizing any particular removal, particularly just okay removal like that. So maybe that's why you're feeling that a little bit, is like the backup plan maybe got a little worse.
I think part of it too is like it's the sort of thing where when you have it in the perfect draw, it actually feels really good, but it's really bad outside of that, and that's like a little bit too, I think, specific.
I guess we are calling it a springleaf drum, so
I mean, that springleaf drum is a very targeted card. But this deck, I like Reality Heist, the dig through time that's cheaper for artifacts. Patchwork Automaton is fantastic in it. There's just a lot of different things that you can do with this deck that really end up playing out well. And you want to be aggressive. Dragon Spark Reactor can have its moment in the sun.
I've played decks with multiples of that.
Oh yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
But Virus Beetle's fantastic, and the like red-black version with like the Oni Cult Anvil. One card I want to call out as not being very good is the Scrapyard Smelter, the 3/4 that sacks an artifact to get +2/+1. I've actually just been okay with that card. It hasn't really kind of lived up to its potential from what I can see.
Yeah, it does play out a lot more closer to just a 3-mana 3/4 than it does to like the potential kind of game-ending threat that we thought it may have been.
Yeah.
What else?
I like the 5-color value decks, and these decks obviously overlap somewhat with, some of the stuff we're talking about. But overall, I think that, I started one draft with the Kami War, and it actually worked out. Like, you just draft like a bunch of Gainlands, you draft a bunch of removal, like you draft a bunch of sagas, and you just kind of just take good cards and try to set up some late game loops, which is again why it overlaps so much with the white-green enchantment deck. And this deck can be a lot of fun to play. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's also something empowering about knowing whatever bomb you open pack 3, you could probably make it work. And that can be really sweet.
That's the best feeling in the world right there.
Yeah. And Blue-Black Ninjas is one that sometimes you're like the really aggressive ninja deck that's just got all the 1-drops and, multiple Moon Snare specialists, and you're just like, I'm going to just overwhelm you. Sometimes you're the Blue-Black Ninja deck that's just trying to draw extra cards, cast Behold the Unspeakable, has some ninjas to take advantage of its little flyers, but is more of a control deck. It can kind of be in any gradient there, and I find them to all be pretty fun. And then there's all Blue-Green X Ramp, which is it's just kind of all the same thing. Like, there's all this like, are you more focused on blue-green? Are you more focused on white-green? Are you just green in 5 colors? Who knows? I haven't really made a non-green 5-color deck work because it is important to have like, the Greater Tanuki or the aura that makes your land tap for any color. But I'm sure it could be there. Oh, one I also forgot to write down was the white-black care about artifact and enchantment theme. And it's not that I've been exactly white-black really focused. It's that Kami of Terrible Secrets and Naomi Pillar of Order, the uncommon, have been pretty easy to trigger, easier than I expected them to be. And that makes me pretty happy putting these cards in my deck, because you can end up in a spot where it works out pretty well to have them.
Yeah, I mean, if you get Kami of Terrible Secrets triggering every time, it's just sweet. Right. I mean,
it's not hard to do that.
No, and it's not. It stabilizes your board. It even throws a life at you for no reason. So that's nice. Yeah. I started off by perhaps predictably, kind of going down the Blue-Black Ninjas route. I have been happy with it. Again, it feels like a solid performer, but it doesn't feel like you're getting away with anything. In fact, none of the archetypes that I've played have felt so overwhelming that it was like, wow, if you get this, you just can't lose. Not yet, at least. Dust is still settling, so maybe we'll find one like that, but not yet. I've been playing a lot of red-blue based artifacts, and then going into strangely white a decent amount of the time, even though it's not really an artifact centric color. I found splashes in there that seemed to fill holes that I didn't have in others, and then of course black, as you described as well. Another archetype that seems to be performing really well is green-black, which is strange because it's a little bit. It doesn't really have like a particular synergy, that stands out really strongly, but the average card quality is quite high. And I think that this goes to what you were talking about before with, like you don't really need specific removal. You're not really trying to disrupt your opponent's game plan quite as much as normal. It's more about like the sum quality of what you're doing on your side. And look, the green commons, none of them are amazing, but very few of them are trash. and they go deep, like the top to bottom, they're pretty dang good. And that's actually true for black as well. They're kind of the two colors with the highest, like, average common quality. And when you put them together, you can win games off of those cards. It's not particularly exciting, but it works. And splashing is trivial for that deck as well. So that's good. And then, as you mentioned, blue-green base ramp is the deck that I'm looking to sort of target and figure out next. I've seen a lot of people online posting about playing blue-green, splashing black, or blue-green black straight up. And that's kind of, that's my favorite 3-color combo in Magic. So I will definitely be searching for that. Let's talk about the top commons for each color. We've got a few of the top commons here, just the ones that have been performing the best either for us or on 17 lands. So let's see what we've got. What's our white top commons?
So Imperial Oath, I got to give a shout out to Jason ILTG. He drafts a lot, and he's on Twitter, and he called out Imperial Oath before the set even came out. He's like, I got my eye on this one. I think this one's going to be really good. And it has been. It's actually the top performing common on 17 lands, which I would not have predicted.
That is insane.
Or white common, not common overall.
Yeah, no, I know. I feel like that will not be true by the end of the set. Like, I just cannot imagine that a 6-mana card is going to perform better than all of these cheap cards that just do something every single game you draw them. But at any rate, it is a big eye opener to say, hey, this card is something you need to pay attention to.
It just puts a lot on the board, cruise vehicles, stabilizes you, and then scries 3 to find whatever your next good play is.
It's a really powerful card. It's just 6 mana. I mean,
yeah. Vigilance also surprisingly relevant. So good overall. Spirited Companion is one that I just never, like, I have a hard time not picking it when I see it.
Yeah.
It just does everything.
High floor.
Like, yeah. I have not yet picked it up for a ninja yet, but that I assume will be very, very satisfying as well.
I have.
And then Arrow of Enlightenment, just a solid card. This is the 2-life, scry 2/2 first strike, just kind of, and this is what I'm talking about. We're like, if you play this on turn 2, that counts as playing a 2. You're gaining 2 life and then putting a decent creature into play. So
right. This is where if you want a 1-for-1 with this card, you're not really happy.
Right. And if you're controlling, this can often hold off 2 cards, maybe 3, right? A 2/2 first strike is pretty beastly.
It is. Pretty and easy to. A good example is I forget what it's called, but the red, the shock.
Mm-hmm.
You shock this, right? And you think, okay, well, I picked the shock pretty high. I use it on their Arrow of Enlightenment creature. I'm good to go. But you're falling behind. I mean, straight up, you're just falling behind.
So those are kind of like the top commons for white. And then white is one of the colors I haven't drafted quite as much. Like I drafted in the context of the enchantment deck, but I haven't drafted like red, white, or black, white all that much. I did draft 1 blue white. I was telling you about that. I drafted 2 of the Tinkers and 2 of the 7-drop artifact. the equipment.
The haste one, so sweet.
I went 3/3. It didn't perform super well, but there was something there. I'm kind of curious to keep going. I think the white blue vehicles theme is kind of just.
I just like that you went for it.
But
what about blue?
Blue, no surprise. Network Disruptor is I think the best blue common, and the data kind of backs that up. It's a cheap artifact. It has a good ETB when you're attacking. It's good with ninjas. It's just good. It's a 1-mana card. It does so much. It's good at surprisingly many points of the game, despite it being a card that looks like it won't be good later.
Yes.
The Modern Age also really good. This is the loot, and then you get a 2/3
flyer.
And that works out pretty nicely. It can do some good stuff. And then Moonsnare Specialist, your favorite, of course. And that one is pretty good too.
It is good. It's interesting. I found that I cast it for 4 a lot more than I anticipated.
Yeah, it's actually not great to Ninja because whatever you're bouncing probably cost more than the 1-mana discount you're getting, and you're not getting any value from it hitting them. Like, it just does the ETB when you cast it. So that's not one that you usually spend a lot of resources ninjaing, though it can be cute when you're picking up multiple ninjas and, just kind of looping them or whatever.
And I have done that, but yeah, a lot of times it's just 4 mana war.
For black, Okiba Reckonerate, again, just 1-mana cards.
This card's so scary.
Drain you for 2, give you 2 minutes, and gives your vehicles minutes if you care about that. It just does so much good stuff. And really happy with Okiba Reckonerate, especially in multiples. Like, it just overwhelms your opponent really nicely. Yep. Virus Beetle also has been really performing for me. I think Virus Beetle's awesome. It's good to pick up with ninjas. It's 1/1 artifact. It can do some stuff with that. It can chump block. It helps count as an artifact for the white-black theme. It just does again, basically everything you're looking for. And just for 2 mana, you can't really get old. I lost really badly to this white-black deck earlier today that they went Virus Beetle, Spirited Companion, and then Circuit Mender, the 2/3 that gains 2, and then when it dies, draw a card. And then just like the middle of the game, and they're just up like 4 cards on me.
That's demoralizing.
It was not where I wanted to be.
What about red?
And then Twisted Embrace is fine.
Oh, sorry, Twisted Embrace, yeah.
The aura that, gives +1/+1 and kills a creature when it comes into play. The thing I like most about this is using it with various cards that pick up enchantments. So you can use this you recast it with the Poet or pick it up with the Hot Tub Kami or whatever. It's just so sometimes it's kind of counterintuitive, but you want to put this on a creature that's actually not that likely to get into combat as opposed to your best brawler, so that you can just sit there and recurse it. Unless, of course, you want to pick it up from the graveyard with Gloomshrieker, in which case you should put it on the creature that's going to get brawling and get itself dead.
Yeah, best case is when you can put it on a middle ground creature where it unlocks an attack it may not have had prior, but it's not like your all-star on the board. That's a nice play. That +1/+1 matters.
And for red, so you've got Kami's Flare and Voltage Surge, and they're both fine. They're obviously like not bad, but it's not I'm just not that excited about these cards, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like they just don't really do what I want to them to do very much. Like, look, I'll take them and I'll play them, but I haven't found them to lead to wins in quite the same way removal has in other formats. So Don't get me wrong, these are good cards, but
it's the sagas,
And then I like Experimental Synthesizer quite a bit. I think Experimental Synthesizer has got a lot going on.
Yep, it's a highly synergistic card for a lot of things, and it's also just value. And then there's green. Fang of Shigeki.
Fang of Shigeki is really good. It's such a high priority. This is the 1/1 Death Touch for 1 because it's an enchantment.
Yeah.
So you just get massive amounts of value from this card, and it's really not hard to imagine. Like the games where you start with this, it saves you so much damage, and then it's an enchantment, so your enchantment stuff matters, and then it's also just at any point in the game it only costs 1 mana. It combines nicely with Master's Rebuke, which is another solid card. Just lets you get some good stuff going. And then I love Geothermal Kami. I have been really impressed with this. Green has a bunch of kind of mid-range commons. I think the color with the highest like black and blue, I think have some really, really good commons at the high end. And green is mostly like a little bit flatter, but they're still pretty good. And green is such a backbone color for some of these decks that I'm pretty happy with it anyway, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to point that out too, about that green that we talked about a minute ago. It's very flat, but it really does go deep. I was talking with Jay, my friend, and he's been drafting a bunch, and he's just like, I've just been playing a bunch of green X decks and just succeeding with them, and they're not like, there's nothing to write home about it, but then we looked it up on 17 lands, and it's like, the green commons go very, very deep, and they just kind of do the thing that they're going to do and present board presence, and you have to deal with them. The other thing that stood out about looking at the cards, that we have at the top here are that how important cheap cards continue to be in limited. They really rule the day. White has this aberration where it's got this 6-drop at the top, which is a little bit weird, but green, black, and blue all have a 1-drop as their top performer, and red has a 2-drop with Kami's Flare, but then the next 3 in a row are 1-drops, and then the next one's technically a 6. It's the board, but that's really often a 2. But whatever. Yeah. If you look at the top 4 cards, it's 2-drop, 1-drop, 1-drop from red. So like, cheap cards are where it's at. Like we've noted this shift. This is a big deal. They really have put it, and the last few sets for the last year or so, we've seen that a lot of times the best common in a color is the 1-drop that actually does things. And they've somehow unlocked that design space over the last few years. And now I just look for these cards to be the best performer in their color, and they have been.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this just shows you why you want efficient cards so much.
That's right. So let's talk about a couple of individual cards before we call it a show here, Luis. What cards have stood out for you? One I wanted to point out was the Kami War. We said, hey, look, if this is a format where you can cast it, great, send us a screenshot or whatever. And we've gotten a lot of screenshots. It turns out this is a format where you can cast it.
I mean, this is what I've cast. I cast it pretty
I haven't got
myself.
it yet. I want it.
Yeah, it's very fun. Another one that I want to call out. It actually is funny. So yes, this format is, you got to do something quickly. There's a lot of fast stuff going on. Yet the like living the dream cards somehow all got there. Like Mech Titan Core is a real card. Like you know, the 2/4 equipment or a vehicle for 2 that if you pay 5, exile it and 4 other artifacts or artifact creatures or vehicles, you get the 10/10 with all the keywords.
Yeah.
Like that card's legit.
It is.
I played against it and with it now multiple times, like 2 on each side actually. And it's gone off 3 of those 4 times and it threatened to the 4th. Like it's just a card that it's not that hard to accomplish the goal. And it's a cheap artifact that kind of sits there and this, you know, is really threatening to your opponent. Like they've got to be scared of it, right? How could they not be?
Yeah, I played a game with it last night and I kept getting one card away and my opponent had to kill a bunch of random nonsense artifact creatures just to keep me off from doing it.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. So yeah, like, and then Brilliant Restoration. This is a card we were pretty low on, the like 3 white, return all artifacts and enchantments in your graveyard.
Yeah.
This card's legit too. Like,
it's sweet.
It's a little bit less good, I think, because it's cost 7, but I've definitely lost badly to this card, and you can construct decks with it that are really, really cool, where you just like kind of play and know that at some point I have 7 mana, win the game, bring my whole graveyard back.
Yeah, I've played it too and had that experience. It does demand quite a bit from the deck build. Like you really do need to lean into it to make sure that when you cast it, you're going to win the game, because otherwise it's a pretty big liability. But when you do, you do. I mean, I won the game when I cast it.
And on the flip side, I've also found the counter spells to be decent. I don't like Essence Capture quite as much because there's a lot of cards you want to counter that aren't creatures like Sagas. But the Crab plus Network Disruption are both pretty solid cards if you're in your like blue decks to win these long games and make sure you can counter their key cards as well. So been fairly happy with those. And Containment Construct I love. There's just multiple ways to discard, and the best way to use Containment Construct isn't channel. It's to just have it in play like the modern age, discard a land, then just play the land. Like super easy 2-for-1 right there.
That's
and
sweet.
then as for expensive cards, another one which is a lot better than I think we initially gave it credit is Spinning Wheel Kick. Like,
oh, is it really?
I've just seen this card end games like at 6 or 8 mana, like either on my side or on the opponent's side. When watching like the draft showdown, I saw Ben S, get some really good value out of this card with like a Death Toucher or even just like a Geothermal Kami. You got a 4/3 out, right? 4 damage is a lot of damage. So this format kind of hits the sweet spot where you need early plays. And if you don't have them, you'll feel like you're going to have a real uphill battle. But you also need like late game ways to win the game and break through. And Spinning Wheel Kick is the latter, of course. It's not a good early play, but even at 4 mana, it does something. And at 6 or 8, it can really do a lot of damage.
You've been casting the Invokes, the 4 mana symbol cards?
Yeah, I've been winning and losing, to these Invokes. Like,
yeah,
it's just not impossible to do it. And when you have it, you try to take dual lands higher, you play like some extra fixing, you just do all this, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're just casting these hugely powerful cards.
Right. And they're actually, you were able to put them on the stack. I thought there was a pretty good chance that we would just never see them really played, but that's not been the case. Haven't been a huge fan of vehicles in general.
Nah, vehicles are not good.
I think I just kind of move off of vehicles as a design thing. The sets that have them, they're just okay. I get the appeal flavor wise. I think that they're cool cards, but it feels so difficult to nail the balance between, this just isn't worth it. Like I don't like even like the Dragonfly suit we talked about. That should be totally fine, but it's just not. And then the ones that are good are like, oh my God, right? Like they turn into some huge monster mobile or whatever that's really difficult to deal with. And I just wish that there was a little bit more middle ground for vehicles there as well. Those are some of the things. Okay, Luis, let's call it a show there. We'll have, of course, a lot more to talk about in the coming weeks about the new format. Really exciting. It's been getting really great reviews early. That isn't uncommon to happen, but I have to say people seem really stoked on this set, and I'm kind of excited about that. Yeah,
it's cool. Like I remember when they first said that they were gonna, do the whole like 1,000 years in the future thing, and I have to say the flavors worked out really well too. Like I enjoy everything that's going on here. It's been really, really good.
Even the DJ, is that still?
Yeah. The Toarashi songwriter or whatever. Yep.
All right, let's call it a show there. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find us. You can find everything about the show over at lrcast.com, including all the episodes ever and links to all of our stuff, our streams, social media, all that stuff right on the front page of LRcast for your convenience. The show's brought to you by Channel Fireball. Make sure you check them out for all of your Kamigawa Neon Dynasty needs. If there's anything that you want to pick up from singles to sealed product, you can find it over at channelfireball.com. Make sure you check out FTX if you're looking to get into the cryptocurrency or blockchain space. It's a kind of a wild, crazy world over there, but it's worth checking out. Its technology could be something that's in our lives going forward. And it's ftx.us here in the United States, ftx.com outside. And that's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you next week.
I was recently reminded of this thread that Gabby wrote on Twitter a while ago about, like, back when we thought, well, we're deep in the pandemic, we don't know how long this is going to last, but when it comes back, we'll go to a Grand Prix. And she's like, you sleeved up your deck, you sit down for round one, you nearly lose round one, you look for your friends, you do that, like, and she's like walks you through the experience of a Grand Prix. And it's like kind of brutal seeing that now, and we don't know if that's coming back. And in fact, the signs kind of point it to not. But all I can tell you is I want to go play at a live Magic tournament, like a big one, so badly. Like the times there were just so good. And
it must be so crazy for you because it was such a huge part of your life. I mean, more so than almost any, person. I mean, you went to so many events like that. It was just part of your routine.
It's funny because I don't regret the ones I didn't go to. And I know I went to some of them that I kind of shouldn't, like I didn't have that much fun, right? Like when it was like full on, like kind of getting burned out, I went to 30 Grand Prix, this is too many, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But the good ones feel so good, and I just miss it so much. You're like, oh, look, I think we're near. I see a bunch of what looks like Magic players,
Yeah, backpacks. Follow the backpacks. Yeah.
You go in, there's my friends, like, there's my buds sitting around the table. Let's go talk to them. And then you open your sealed deck. And the thing that gives me hope is there's a lot of people out here. I'm not the only one who wants this. I believe in some form or fashion it'll be back, and I will do, come hell or high water, I'll do my best to get there because, God, it sounds so good. Like just some sort of large play experience that I care about the outcome, and a lot of the people I like are there. Like that doesn't seem like it's too much to ask, and I think it's possible we get those back. So here's me hoping for a better future. Maybe it'll take John Finkel's hedge fund to take over Hasbro to get these back. But
look, all I want is the sweet, sweet smell of stale chicken tenders in the morning. Fill my.
We didn't know how good we had it till it's gone, but you know what? I believe that some of this can come back. So here's me hoping for that. I'm taking the optimistic view.